Hi everybody, this is Chris Schmidt, and I am back after wrapping up Transform. Why don't we jump right on in and start a new tutorial? So what we're going to make this week is a swirling vortex of death. Um, yeah, that's a good thing to call it. It's gonna be lots of MoGraph, and what I kind of hope to do is to do the animation here and maybe pass it off to Nick so he can render it up so it looks nice and sexy. So we're going to start out by making this helix shape, and what we want is just kind of a nice little swirl. So I'm going to change the start radius to be really tiny, and we actually don't need this to spin around quite this much. I'm going to increase my radius just a little bit, and let's pull this around so we get maybe something kind of like that. What do we get? About 260 radius. That seems like a good start. We might end up changing that a little bit. We could even change our radial bias a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to pull that down to maybe 25%. So you get a little bit of a swirl there. Now, let's go and make a cloner. And let's just start out by throwing a single cube in that cloner. That's way too big, so I can hit the letter T for scale on the cube and just shrink that down a bit. That seems like a good place to start. And we're going to change this to object mode, and the object will be the helix. So as soon as we do that, we're going to get this count. I'm going to change it to, let's say, even distribution. And something I love about putting splines into the cloner is you can automatically set a rate. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play on my timeline, and let's put in 1%. And you see we're going to start getting a little bit of motion here. So that's pretty cool. Now, I actually want to go the opposite direction, so I think let's put in -10. And all right, now we're getting some motion there. Maybe a little slow for my taste. Yeah, that's a little better. Now what's happening is each clone as it hits this endpoint is automatically jumping back to the beginning. So that's pretty useful. We're getting a little pop at the end, so I'm going to maybe increase my start radius so it doesn't quite do that tiny little bit of a swirl there. Okay, so this is the beginning of our vortex. Now what we're going to end up doing, actually, we can repeatedly throw it back in here so we can check out how it's looking, is I'm going to end up taking my cloner and dropping it into a second cloner, and we're going to set this one to radial. And let's set the radius to 0 and maybe drop this to 3. So here's what we're going to end up doing. But let's turn that one off for now and just focus on this one. So a lot of this is going to be stylistic differences depending on the way you want to make this look. But we can just start throwing in lots of different effectors to change our final effect here. So let's turn on random for one. And let's have it not affect position, but let's affect the scale. And let's see, I'm going to start out by just saying randomly, you can randomly be any of these scales. That's really scaling this up quite a bit. So now I do like all the variation in it. So what I'm going to do is actually take my original cube and shrink it down. So it's going to end up really tiny. But now we get all these variation in the different pieces. I think we want a lot more pieces. So we've got our even distribution here, but we can crank this up so we get a lot more pieces. That's kind of cool. And let's see, let's start stacking on more effects. Now I'm going to keep on making sure I have this first original cloner turned on, or selected when I make these new effectors. That way those are automatically applied. Let's see, what's another thing I want to do? I'm going to actually add a second random, and I'm going to use this one to do position, but I don't want it affecting everything uniformly like this. So I'm going to do is maybe increase all these numbers here. But what I want it to affect is not everything, but maybe these outside parts. So as I swirl in tighter, they kind of go back to what it would look like if this was off. So the best way to do that would be go to our fall off, set it to sphere, and now we've got the spherical fall off. I'm going to crank up the fall off so it's 100%, and maybe hit the letter T to scale this up. But now you see it's kind of the opposite of what I want. You see it's nice and kind of even over here, and as it gets closer, it's going crazy. So all we have to do is go back to fall off here and click invert. Now let's see, it's a little jittery. I wonder why it's doing that. I'm not actually sure why. Oh well, I'm just going to ignore that jitteriness for now because I don't think it should be doing that at all. I don't think that will show up at render time. Okay, well, let's ignore that. And let's see, I think I'm going to want to get rid of a little bit of this fall off so the center point has, it's a little bit more even. And perhaps we can even scale this entire fall off up. So as we increase this, we're adding less randomness because this is an inverted sphere. So we're getting lots of wiggle still, but let's continue to ignore that. And maybe these are a little big. We don't have to fly out quite that much. Oh, and actually this one's kind of in and out. I don't want very much of this one at all. Let's drop it to something like 50. So there we go. Now you see how we're getting kind of, these pieces are coming from all over the place. Let's see, one of these, this spread is actually kind of nice. Let's leave lots of that. So these pieces come from all over the place, and then they're swirling nice and uniform as they get sucked into the middle. Let's see. I don't want to see this because I don't like having to see that fall off all the time. So let's leave it like this. And let's see, what's another good thing we can do next? Well, let's say these are shrinking as they get to the center point. So let's make I'm going to select this cloner and go to a plane effector, and I want to scale to -1. Actually, uniform scale to -1. And now they're completely shrunk. We don't want that. So let's go to our fall off and do the same thing. Let's go to sphere and hit the letter T. I'm going to scale this whole thing up. And now you see how they're shrinking as they get near the center. If I crank this fall off all the way up, then they should exist until they get to the very center point where they shrink to nothing. So that's kind of cool. And we could scale this all the way up. And you see we get a nice big piece out there. And as they shrink into the middle, as they get sucked into this black hole or whatever it is that we're making, they're going to disappear. And I see that since we have this kind of big spread on this outside and it gets really tiny in the middle, we could, if we want, go back here and increase this so we have even more pieces on this one arm. So just tons of stuff is flying in there. So once again, this could be, anything could be getting sucked in here, or we could have all sorts of different shapes. We have spheres getting sucked in, any little detail we wanted. I'm going to go back to this random here, and you see how we have a lot of thickness left and right. Let's get rid of that. I don't need so much of that. These can stay somewhat uniform. So now we're getting a little bit more. Almost all the movement we're getting is long ways here instead of killing or adding so much depth, which I don't think I want stylistically here. So you get this plane effector with this fall off, but I'm going to hide that one as well. I don't need to see that, but now they're shrinking really nicely. And let's see what happens if how this looks if we put it with all three arms. We can turn this on, and now you see we're getting this really cool swirl overall. I like that. Now let's see, what's the next problem? Next problem is these are kind of appearing out of nowhere. They just kind of pop in. So I think what we need is this plane effector again to be scaling outside of its radius. So I'm going to copy and paste that. And it'd kind of be good to be naming these. So we could call this inner scale. And we can call this outer scale. And let's see, because I copy and pasted it, I'm going to have to drag this in. I want it to be the last effector in here right now. And you see what it's going to do right now is shrink that inside. But all I have to do is go back, and I believe let's just invert this one. And now we can scale this one out. And let's make it visible. And now what's happening is anything outside this radius is scaled to 0. So you might not want to go out quite that far. But what we do want is this inner scale. So let's pull our fall off back. Now you see we're getting our scale back in the middle here. But these should start scaling in from nothing, and then they're going to fade into the middle. So now they're not just popping out from nowhere. So I kind of like that. Let's hide this visibility again. So let's see, everything's shrinking quite a bit. Everything gets shrank because of this outside thing. So we could go back to our cube and increase it. So now we get these bigger chunks kind of towards the middle because they're shrunk on the outside and they're going to shrink on the inside. So that looks kind of cool. We can hide the visibility of our helix as well. So now we're just seeing our end product here. So when I hit render, we'll see what we're ending up with. Now, something I really like about MoGraph, of course, is that everything is still live. We can go back and edit anything we want. So we have, say, this end angle on this helix, and I could just start increasing this. And as I do, we're going to get more swirls around. And if I hit play, this is still swirling all the way around. So I like that quite a bit, but maybe not quite so much. There we go. That's pretty cool. And let's see, we've got this cube in here with lots of randomness, but we could copy that cube in a second time, and let's say I'm going to, let's turn these off for a second. What we could do is shrink this cube way down, but then make it really long. Shrink and make it really long. So now we should have more random pieces like that. Actually, it's shrunk in the orientation. I'd prefer it not to be. So let's copy that number and swap it back for kind of an 8 and make it along this way. Well, that's kind of interesting, but yeah, maybe a little extreme. That's cool. I can copy it again, and maybe we can make, I'm going to change this to 26-ish. This can be 3 and 3. And now we should be getting longer pieces going, kind of pointing inward. I actually don't like those two, but the point is to experiment. We can try and throw in a sphere as well. That should be alternating. We're going to have to shrink it way down, obviously. But now we have cubes and spheres. If we want things to be more geometric, we could set it to other types and drag this way down. Maybe delete the Fong tag. It's kind of whatever you're going for. Once again, I just kind of like that cube a little, that simple cube. Keep it nice and clean. What else can we do here? We could do some rotation if we like. That could be built in automatically from one of these existing randomness. I can click on rotation here and let's just add some chaos here. Now this one fades out, so what's kind of cool is we get these chaotically randomly rotated pieces on the outside, but as it kind of fades into the center, they're going to be lining up again. So if that's what you're going for, then this should work pretty well. You could also do the opposite, but I kind of like that. And let's see, what's something else that's good? Well, this one's actually fairly straightforward. I like the setup a lot. But something that's kind of cool, I think, would be if we can kind of control this coming into existence at all, as if, you know, it wasn't already existing. You see that at the beginning and the end, this thing pretty much looks the same. So why don't we add in one more effector here that will scale everything down. So I'll make a plane effector. I had the original cloner selected. And what's this going to do? It's going to be another uniform scale to -1. So it's going to shrink everything to nothing. And let's set the sphere. Maybe, let's see, full fall off? I don't know. Let's see. Not full, that's for sure. Let's do something like this. So what we can do here, I think, is we can record our scale. Yeah, I think that'll work pretty well. What we can do is say at the time of 0, and I'm going to hold down Control and click on my little dot here. So at the time of 0, the scale is 100%. Let's say time of 40, this is just a random guess. At the time of 40, this scale will be 0, which means it's not having any effect anymore. And now let's rewind and hit play and see what happens. Okay, you see how that's scaling, and that happened a little fast, so we can drag this out so it takes more time. We kind of want it moving in at the speed our pieces are. That's pretty good. Once again, it's moving kind of quick, so I'm actually going to go a full 90 here, and then hit Command D and go to my render settings and maybe give us twice as much time, 180 frames. And let's change the visibility of that so we don't have to look at it. Rewind, hit play, and let's see, now we have all these pieces coming in and they're swirling in the middle. So now we had total control of that. I'm going to go to my render settings, and I'm just going to say all frames, 600 or 800 by 600 is fine. I'm not going to save it. I want to see if that jitter goes away at render time. I'm hoping that it does. But let's let that chug along for a little bit. Let's see. Geez, I mean, we could do anything we want with this. You could add displacement to these arms. We could make this overall structure start spinning. We could add, oh, you got offset and variation. So we have these 3 arms spin at different amounts here. So they're a little bit offset. We can, well, you could always change the rate at which everything is animated. So we can click on this cloner. So this is moving in like that, but we could have it say move at normal 25. And now they're going, well, that's inverted. We see how the pieces are flying out from the center and they're floating away. That's pretty cool. We have rate variation. I could change this rate variation, and now they're all going to, if I crank it up, we'll see it better. But now you see different pieces are flying in faster than others. Don't want that, but a good example of more variation that we could do. Smooth rotation. Oh, look at that, smooth rotation. That's why it was going all jittery. So per segment, smooth rotation. There we go. Out of curiosity, did this run jittery? Yeah, it did. So I'm glad I just found that. Okay, there you go. Important tip. Turn on smooth rotation. So now we've got all these pieces swirling in. Very nice. I like it. Now, something that you might want to do is we've got all these pieces flying in, but these all three of these arms look identical. So now we've kind of gotten this figured out. What I could do, I'm going to rename this to be 1. I could copy this entire arm a second time, and I could grab this one and change its random seed. We might have to go frame forward to refresh, or not. Maybe oh, it's random seed for rate variation. What's a good place to do a random seed? Oh, we could change our count. I think by changing the count just a little bit, that's going to start looking completely different. We could also apply different random effectors so that they're scaled differently, but I'm not too worried about that. Or, oh, we could totally do an offset on it. That's even better. We leave that count back at 90, do a little bit of offset so that they're offset. I can copy it a third time, so we have one for each of the 3 arms. Do some more offset, and now all 3 of these are offset to different times, so they won't look exactly the same. Something that'd be kind of cool here too is we got 3 different arms, so each of these arms could have different pieces flying in. We do still have a couple pieces just popping in, but that doesn't bother me too much. So there we go. We have a swirling vortex of death. There's so many things you could do to keep on modifying this. Let's go to a point where you can see the whole arm. If we have this helix visible, we could give it height so that it's kind of doing a tornado type of effect, like they're swirling inward as well, but we're still getting that same kind of motion. That's really cool. I actually like that better. The possibilities are endless. Like the motion just looks so cool. And like I said, I hope to pass this tutorial off to Nick so he can light it up real well, put some sexy textures on there. Not really my specialty. Let's see, is there anything else we can do to play with this? I mean, there's so many effects that we could do. It really, really never ends. Well, no, I guess that's about it. This went a lot faster than I thought it would. I thought it was a really cool effect, really fun to play with. Like it never ends. We could add another random effector to any of these. We could grab all 3 of these and go to random effector, and we could add in. I'm gonna turn off position, turn scale back on, maybe do another 360 degrees rotation. Let's just do this for an example. Now you see how those are all kind of moving around, but we could turn on a noise, maybe even index them, and now those will all be rotating as they spin. That's a little extreme. Let's pull back our strength. Now these will all be constantly rotating. Looks like our speed is really fast. Let's drop that to 25%. Nice. I like this quite a bit. Swirling Vortex of Death. Wow, this looks cool from every angle. So if I turn off, and even here, like by turning off this randomness, it's going to get rid of a lot of the chaos of it. But now we have more control over it, and now you can see these swirls work really nicely. And then from here, I'd even be tempted to, we could take our helix and we can add more height to it. So they're swirling a little bit more. And we could add more spiral arms. That's really cool. I'm going to put back the 3 just because I think it pops a little bit more. But there we go. Hopefully that was useful to you guys. This is something I played with a little ways back. I thought it was really neat to be a fun thing to share. So yeah, we're back full time on tutorials, so you'll be seeing a whole bunch more. Any ideas for things you might like to see, pass along. We hope to do more combo tutorials where I do something with it and then Nick takes over and makes it look nice and sexy. But besides that, this is Chris Schmidt, and I'll see you guys in a week. Bye.